There's a question addressed to Jimmy. Do you think it's possible to increase the number of LGBTQ certified businesses in the Dominican Republic without protective legislation? Yes. With regard to protection, we are very careful, at the request of our members and following a decision by our board, since we were being targeted by conservative attacks whenever we publish something. Now we have our own very well integrated network and community. We have different groups, and so we blend these groups. It's not an exclusive chamber. There's also women, Afro-descendants, LGBT, and as part of that conglomerate, we mix everyone, which creates a safe environment. But these businesses that are certified or recognized as LGBT receive special treatment and have a special quota within the programs. So we can actually prevent someone from getting hold of this list, which is not public. This actually is distributed between corporate partners or interested businesses, so as to prevent the identification of companies as specifically LGBT. Now, one positive development is that we have already found ways to deal with these attacks by filing for damages. So under the law, if someone says, okay, don't buy from them because they're an LGBT business, you can sue for damages. You don't need to wait for the enactment of an anti-discrimination law. You are causing harm to me that reduce my sales, and I can sue you. So this is something we can already do to prevent discrimination and this kind of risk to LGBT people. It's not like you're going to get killed in our country if you're LGBT, but you may get bad rap, bad publicity. You suffer some sort of bullying, so as to keep you down in your vulnerable position. So we can certify, but we don't publicize this. This stays between the parties concerned. So this is between the different institutions or corporations. Thank you very much, Jimmy. We now have a question for Adrian. Since Montevideo is a city with very inclusive policies, do you think an LGBTQ business certification will be possible in the future? Well, Montevideo is actually listed for the 4th year as the most LGBT capital in the Southern Cone. But yeah, it's absolutely essential and necessary. As I said at the outset, a certification for the public consumers, also bearing in mind the importance of the capital and of tourism in the capital. We have more tourists than residents. Well, this year is exceptional, what with the COVID pandemic. And this certification is important, especially when it comes to LGBT-owned business enterprises, or in which over 50% of the company is LGBT owned. This helps boost empowerment. Here we have an advantage compared to the Dominican Republic, and this is something we've often discussed with Jimmy. As we have a more open country in terms of laws and such like, it becomes easier. But it's not that you can achieve everything faster. Government procurement is a case in point. We have laws, we have quotas for government employees, but we don't have definitions for public procurement, for instance. So this is a whole package. So we need to make the most of these laws, but we need to have this not only Montevideo, in all 19 departments of the country, to be able to certify and grow the economy of LGBT individuals, so that they can have their own businesses and they can learn how to manage them, which I think helps us grow as a country and to help grow the LGBT economy, which is very important.
Thank you, Adrian. We have a few additional questions. One question is, which do you believe are the critical steps? Which are the critical steps in the coming 2 years to increase diversity and inclusion in public procurement in your countries? These questions are for Adrián and Jimmy. The critical steps are steps that we have started to take. First, we have one task, and that is to raise awareness in the public entities, especially their procurement department, as to the importance of why to buy from populations in a situation of vulnerability. In my procurement plan, I need to have a quota to ensure that these providers can be taken on as state providers or suppliers. There were some elections recently in the Dominican Republic, and we saw something absolutely surprising. The candidates that were the most conservative and those who attacked gay or LGBT marriage, they obtained fewer votes than the individuals who are open-minded. This points to the fact that our society has already gone through a transformation. So we don't have marriage, we don't have cohabitation, we don't have civil law, but we do have a community that is willing to continue fighting and to fight for its place. What will be critical in the next few years is to have more entrepreneurs, to train more companies and to give them skills and include them in the processes that exist within firms. They need to learn to sell to the state or the government, and that the government, through public policy, it incorporates sexual diversity topics. That is a work to be carried out by us and by civil society. We need to say, hey, of that 20%, you must include people who are part of our group or who are recognized, because that way you will create a circular economy and the money will not be simply going to one group. This will generate more jobs, more opportunities, and pulls the population in vulnerability to a higher social level, generating more opportunities and encourages more people in the community to follow those steps and apply them. As for Uruguay, we face a similar challenge. We have had a government or administration change in March after 15 years, and we need to get to know the new authorities because the political color has changed with the political party change. So now we need to start working with a new government, with new people. That is a challenge. But the most important challenge, I believe, for chambers and for our groups is that the LGBT policy, the growth, the economic empowerment of LGBT groups cannot be, and I'm trying to put this politely, it can't be due to the political color of the country. It needs to be a state policy regardless of who is in power. When we have a government change, an administration change, we can't be moving back and forth in our policies. So prior to each election, there needs to be a conversation. We need to look at figures and demonstrate, prove what we're doing, so that if there is an administration change, the government doesn't backpedal. I'm not saying that in the case of Uruguay because it won't happen here, but it's not a good outcome anywhere. We highly depend on building those networks such as Global for Us, or working with colleagues, working with international organizations, in this case the IDB, to ensure that this becomes a policy that lasts over time and that there is no possibility of going back on policy decisions. That's important. Now, this being a new government with new people, we need to get to know them, the new directors, etc. And that is why the training is so important. And this is something that we began earlier, so we mustn't interrupt it. We have to continue with it as we go forward, just as Jimmy was pointing out. Okay, I'd like to thank you both. We have time for 2 more questions, I've been told. The first question is, in addition to marriage certificates, which in Latin American and Caribbean countries are not frequently seen, what other evidence can be used for the certification process in our countries? Well, gossip. We're talking in terms of an island here, obviously. For us, it's very easy to know whether a company or a person are LGBT. Then you can obtain references from other LGBT people, and in the same sector, we know one another, we know who we are. Then we also know if they're living with a same-sex person. But for that also you need evidence. You need evidence such as your electric bill or your telephone bill, provide references from other people. Normally they are referred by somebody who is already a member, and they come and they tell us, hey, look at this company. So then it's easy for us, given the size of the country, with just 10 million inhabitants in the Dominican Republic. So it's easy for us to be able to determine whether a company is truly LGBT. We need to use the tools available to us and forget about what is not in existence here. And it's likewise in Uruguay. We're even smaller, 3 times smaller than the Dominican Republic. So everyone knows everyone here. There's a publicity of a beverage here that said that in Uruguay we know everyone, and that is absolutely true. So it becomes much easier. Yes, there are legal ways of proving, such as a marriage certificate or whatever, but there are also possibilities of obtaining references perhaps from colleagues, from people who work with us. We have a very large board, and generally companies are recommended. And as an example, we don't incorporate partners when there's any doubt. In our case, we don't only have LGBT companies, we've got others also. But we need to make sure that these companies have not discriminated, because we need to be very careful. But recommendation is very important here, knowing one another, and I presume it's much easier than in large countries such as the United States or even Brazil or Mexico. Thank you very much. Last question. Locally, do you recognize LBGT certification from the NGLCC? Because a US-based business would be interested in working in one of our countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, and they'd like to be able to present that certification in order to explore new opportunities. What's your opinion on this? Yes, we do absolutely recognize the NGLCC certification. There are partners, as are other chambers. If Adrian or Justin tell me this company has been certified, is recognized, then we endorse them, and it's absolutely valid. One opportunity for business in the Dominican Republic and the Caribbean is that we don't produce much, and part of public procurement by the government is done by companies outside of this country. We have companies in the United States competing and who get good contracts because of the free trade agreements in place between our countries. So it's work that we and other chambers have to conduct to recognize these free trade agreements and have this commercial dynamic, bearing in mind at the same time that we need to prepare the companies so that they can export. It's not just me having a company I'm going to sell to the Dominican Republic. No, there is a structure and logistics. Those companies need to be prepared in order to do a good job. If our job is poor, then the companies working poorly will impact the Dominican Chamber as well as the US Chamber. So it's our job to ensure that the ecosystem is always well prepared so that we can take that step forward. I fully echo the words of my colleague, and we also have been working on these agreements, as Jimmy pointed out, with other countries, also different sectors. Tourism, for instance, is a sector where we see Uruguayan companies who want to enter the Dominican or the Colombian or the US market. So there is a link between member companies in order to trade in these services. And that is very important. And it's important also to be within the global network, within NGLCC, whenever we meet at an event, whether it be the US Chamber, the Dominican Chamber, or any other chamber, we need to continue moving forward, sharing programs, understanding, validating the programs, so that we're all using the same line of work, the same pillar, enabling these businesses to work through the chambers, because this is going to grow the economic power, not only in Uruguay, but also in the Dominican Republic and the US. And this is even more important in small countries such as mine. We are, after all, the smallest country, so we need to work with colleagues in all the different areas. And for us, the United States and the other chambers are important, but we must continuously be looking and learning and preparing for today and for the future evolutions in the LGBT communities, and positioning our community in the labor market and the economic condition, because that is what is really bringing us together today. Thank you very much. It remains then for me to thank you all, Justin, Casey, Adrian, Jimmy. I think we have all learned a lot today. And let me hand over to Leslie to close the session.